How many emails did you send?
I can say at least 400, 500. Even I was shocked to see that Indians are there as well.
Where are we not there?
So that was actually happening in that lab. I have actually seen the 3D models of lungs, liver. If you go to France, it's in French, which is
Right.
not so common in India. It's
Yeah.
most of these are in English.
Today we have with us Vineet. He's a researcher from CMU, currently at Karza. I first met Vineet when we were at the startup called as Aplara together, and he was a key part of the ML team back then. A lot of the work that he's done before is in 3D reconstruction. He has some work in like medical domain. He has some very, very interesting work in robotics as well. And now he's on to essentially, I think, his second startup. There's a bit of entrepreneurship also in between. So we're going to learn about all of Vineet's journey today. Welcome, Vineet, to Tech My Breath Away.
Thank you, Abbhinav.
Yeah, so Vineet, I kind of just directly want to dig deep into your research, and let's perhaps start with. So you're initially from VNIT, right? And I think you had a little bit of exposure to a bit of research there with one of the professors. So could you just start us off from there?
Yeah, sure. So actually, it started with my journey being getting into engineering college. So I joined as into VNIT. My initial aim was to go into aerospace, but it eventually turned out into robotics. So while at VNIT, I got introduction with robotics through one of the elective course, and from there the journey began actually. In the first 2 years, I was like doing all the chill part of engineering, and after that, I started actually focusing on my career. So with robotics, I worked with a professor named Sheetal Chiddarwar. So I initially started working on a very small project called Biped Robot. I
Okay.
actually tried to implement the skills that I have learned in the classes. So
Okay.
those are just understanding the theory and then actually implementing it, because most of the time I have seen that we are just learning the theory, giving the exams and getting grades. But it's not
Yeah.
only about getting grades. So I started working there, and the project actually lasted for 3 to 4 months during my winter vacations. And eventually, I got another opportunity to join robotics club at VNIT. Usually, they only allow students from first year and second year. I was the special case; they allowed me to enter even at the third year. Then the journey began, and I got into multiple projects in robotics, in computer vision. Ideally, I will say a lot of exposure came from that club only. Otherwise, I would
Okay.
have been a decent mechanical engineer only. Never have exposed to robotics, AI.
So
That's
how did
how.
you get into it, man? How did you convince them to make an exception?
Yeah, so basically, while I was working with this project, I got to know Prasad. So Prasad is one of my super senior. He
Mhm.
was at CMU at the same time when I was doing this project,
Okay.
and I was just very curious, asking him a lot of questions, giving him trouble so many times, even at nights. So because I was stuck in solving that problem, so in that way it worked on, and then we became really good friends during this period. It wasn't like a senior and a junior relationship after that. So we became friends, and then he introduced me to that club because he was part of that club. He was already a member, and then he basically convinced others that this guy can do something, this guy can help in
That's
the projects, and then that's how I got entered into it.
I'm really
nice.
curious. Usually we hear about research more so in, let's say, maybe ISC Bangalore, some of the IIITs, maybe a couple of IITs, at least in these, in robotics and vision, IIIT Hyderabad, of course. So most of these, but not so much from NITs and all of these other institutions. So I'm just wondering, like, later on you also went to CMU, which is obviously world-class standards, right? So how do you kind of compare maybe what was there initially in your undergrad versus a setup like CMU?
Also, maybe before touching upon that, right? Maybe we should touch upon that. How did you even like progress? What was the journey like?
Okay. So I think you're right, Abhinav. There are very few NITs that are actually pursuing research in robotics and vision. Most of the stories we hear from IITs and triple ITs, or maybe even IISc is also a great place. But I can tell you that story how this club started. So there was actually one of our seniors who was very interested in this field, and he basically started one project during his bachelor's, and he got introduced with different people. So he basically started his project, and after that he got an opportunity to work at IIT Bombay
Okay.
with one of the professors who is renowned in robotics. Right now, the professor is retired, but he got the opportunity. Then he came. Then there he got introduced with the Carnegie Mellon University. So
Okay.
basically, all the IIT Bombay people challenged him that you won't be able to go to CMU. But he took it as a challenge. He came back to VNIT. He started a club. Initially, it was a very small club where only 2 to 3 people are involved. In his final year, he worked on a proper research paper. He actually made it to IROS, and that's how people got introduction with robotics, computer vision, and that's how that club got started. But
Awesome.
initially, still it was like at a very small scale. Now it has grown, fully grown up club. Yeah,
If you can just, reveal who was this senior, because,
yeah, sure.
it's like, it's pretty tough, right? I mean, I've seen full-fledged researchers, especially if you add the IROS bit to it, right? Full-fledged researchers take like 2 years, 3 years with all the resources and setup and so on and so forth that I've seen at Triple IT to kind of get a publication at IROS, and without any like setup, guidance, and anything which tells you how to exactly already achieve it. There's no, it's the first time that somebody's doing it, right, figuring it on its own. So I think like fantastic initiative by him. So who's this guy?
Yeah. So his name is Rohan Thakkar. So if you
Okay.
look out for him, he is currently in NASA JPL, and he also
Wow. Okay.
graduated from Carnegie Mellon.
Awesome.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. That's yeah.
Yeah. So
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
uh,
that's pretty cool. Cool. So then, what next for you? Then from there, I think you had this little stint in Italy. I might be going like out of order. I'm not very sure, but yeah, take us through what's up. What's next?
Yeah, yeah.
sure,
They walk
sure.
us through the sequence, right? Like it started with the robotics club at VNIT, and then from there going on, like how did it evolve?
Yes. So actually, after working on this project, I had an aim to apply for a scholarship based internship, which was in RWTH Aachen in Germany. I was planning to apply for it, but eventually during this project, I missed the deadline. And then I decided that I should go for some internship in robotics because I
Hmm.
was passionate to explore it. I wanted to even understand in a better details. So that's how I started applying for different places. I also applied to Carnegie Mellon. I applied to multiple universities in US, Europe. Finally, I got two opportunities, one from Singapore, NUS, and another from Italy. Eventually, I decided to go with Italy because the project was quite interesting and even the professor was very cool. He explained all the projects and all the like entire things in detail. And even he gave like before even I was in Italy, he gave us time every week, at least an hour per week, and he was explaining us what we have to do in Italy. So that actually made me very curious, and that's why I decided to go to Italy. So that's how the journey started to go to Italy. And
Okay.
Which
If
place in
I
Italy?
may, yeah.
Yeah, for our listeners, right? Because they might not be aware of this.
oh, so you're asking about institute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the Biorobotics Institute. Um, it's called SSSA. The full form is in Italian, so I'm not able to
Got it.
pronounce
Okay.
it right now.
Got it. Got
Okay.
it.
It is the
Bio-robotics
bio-robotics
Institute. It
institute.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's very close to Pisa. So if you just
Okay.
Google
Okay.
it, SSSA near Pisa, and Pisa is quite popular.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
Leaning Tower after all.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering that. So you said you got this opportunity from NUS and also this institute.
Yeah.
Typically, it's not as easy to bag these kind of research internships unless you already have perhaps a big brand. So was there like some key strategy or just like a ton of like cold calling, emails, or like how did you actually get these calls?
Okay. So I think two things.
Mm-hmm.
One would be definitely you mentioned cold callings, cold emails. That
Yeah.
definitely helps. And another was like making your resume up to the mark, making
Mm-hmm.
highlighting your projects, showing some work, and that's how you get those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's any alternate way without cold emails, because there
Mm-hmm.
are times when people don't watch, or sometimes even your
Right.
emails go to scam.
Spam.
So
Right.
you have to do cold emails.
True, true, true. So no, the main thing I was wondering was, if some of your perhaps connects through the robotics club or through, your earlier senior or something else helped you land these opportunities.
Yeah, so I think in this initial phase, I didn't actually help a lot because, as I
Okay.
said, I joined this club in third year.
Right.
Even I had only one project. If I could have shown some research potential or some other projects which are like quite a
Right.
large scale project, then it would have been possible. The seniors were ready to help, but it didn't make it.
Right.
So basically, I applied a lot of places, and through this cold emails, I got these two opportunities.
Awesome. Awesome. How many emails did you send?
And I can say at least 400, 500. That's
Oh,
minimum.
Nice.
man.
I like it. I like
400,
it.
500, right? That's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing, man. Great perseverance. Was it like a lot of copy pasting, or
No, no.
oh damn,
So
damn.
it's like I have made a list about the
Mm-hmm.
fields. Then for every field, there are different professors. So find out which professor is working in which domain. And I know that I want to pursue in these particular domains only, don't want to go out of these domains. So based on that, I had prepared emails as per domain. Not definitely not as per professor. It's very
Got it.
difficult if I
Got it.
have to send 500 emails.
Got
Yeah.
it. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and
Great,
now
man.
now especially, that 400, 500, like this is the tips I think for people who are
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
for
See, even like
internships. Mhm.
oftentimes when people are doing a lot of job hunting, right? So
Yeah,
many people are like, you just like have to fill in 100 applications, 200
yeah,
applications.
yeah,
Perhaps you get five calls. Five calls may say maybe probably two or three convert to your interviews and one gives you an offer. That's often like the conversion rate if you don't have a network or don't have
yeah.
anything at all. It's completely new.
And anyways,
Awesome.
now things like the chat GPT and all, they'll make writing easier, right? Especially if you have
Yeah.
the content in mind, at least the yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So then
Yeah.
next, you're now in the Bio-Robotics Institute, and
Yes.
uh, what did you work on then?
Yeah. So after going there, so before even I was there, I already got to know that I will be working on one of the robotic arm. So basically, this professor has a expertise in tactile sensors and biorobotic arms. So his main work was related to that, and he already has developed a lot of tactile sensors. But our idea was like to develop a tactile sensor which is cheap, which can be 3D printed,
Okay.
and which which can be easily integrated with any of the systems that are available in their lab. So that's
Okay.
what the main challenge was. So
Okay.
after going there, I actually got introduced with the 3D printers.
Okay.
I have never used them. So
Nice.
I learned it. So at least 10 to 15 days I learned how to use it, how to use different types of filaments, and how to actually print parts. So there are times that I have printed some random objects as well, just to understand how it works.
Right. I'm wondering what is
What?
like the cost in if in case some parts are wasted, like so what kind of materials go in and
Yeah,
perhaps let's
what
say like some
materials
of
are
these
you using
parts.
in the filament, right? For instance, is it
Yeah.
ABS or something else?
So there are actually different materials like PLA, TBS, then graphene.
Mm, mm,
So every material has a different cost. So initially I started with I think PLA, which was like pretty cheap, at
yeah.
least for the lab. And after that, graphene was like expensive one, and we wanted to use it in the actual experiments. So that one
Mm.
was kept only for the final experiments. Initial all
Makes
trials
sense.
were on different materials.
But then
Makes sense.
I have a question, right? Because you're talking about these different materials, and each has a like each material has its different strengths, tensile strength, all of the different properties. So if you're trying it out with, say, a PLA, for instance, its properties will be extremely different from something like graphene.
Right, right.
And so, how do you experiment? Like, how do you model these like stresses the material is expected to have, and then because you are experimenting with a different material than the final product, right? So, how do you handle that?
So when I was saying initial trials, it was just like learning how to use these printers and how to
Hmm.
actually do the settings. There are different settings, like rightly as you mentioned, even the temperature needs to be
Yeah.
set according to the material. So all this where I was experimenting, but definitely all these ranges of temperature, all these settings, they are mentioned in their documentations. And these documentations also vary depending on the model of the printer. So there are different brands, different models. So I had that documentation. It's just that initially to reduce the cost in just experimenting with the printer, I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah. Graphene is shit costly. Graphene is shit costly.
Yeah. I'm wondering, you talked about tactile sensors for this bio-robotic arm, right? So what
Yeah.
exactly is a tactile sensor?
Yeah. So basically, tactile sensor is something where if you apply a force, it will detect that force. And
Mhm.
to give a very simple idea, in humans we have tactile sensors. Whenever you touch your body,
Right.
you definitely feel that force or that touch. Basically, that's because of the tactile sensitivity. So
Mhm.
that touch is what it needs to be measured or needs to be understood. And in terms of robotics, you definitely need those touch if you're, let's say you are if you are working in an environment where humans are also present, or if
Right.
you are working or if you are working on environments like medical surgery, you
Mhm.
definitely need those touch sensors, and those touch sensors will help you to understand if you are pushing too much on that object or not,
Right.
Hmm.
and
Is it
that will
just a
prevent the damage.
force? Is it just a force, or is there like measurement of heat and maybe something else like that?
So there are actually different versions. So one of them was only on force. The one that I was developing was also on force and as well as on resistance properties. There were few that were actually using some different strategies as well.
Hmm.
It depends on what type of sensor it is and what features it has.
Got it.
So what was
Got it.
the primary application that you were sort of targeting? Because why I ask this is like tactile sensor, you're trying to develop that, but say like you mentioned the biomedical applications, right? For instance, so you might need like human, I mean, not, I don't know what's the right word, but biosafe probably materials or something
Yeah.
like that, right? That will constrain what are the different options. So was there any specific application that you were targeting when developing this?
So initially, we were not developing a very specific application. We were trying to develop it for general robots that are available in the lab, and those robots were actually used in medical applications like surgery or some other applications where human intervention is there, like
Yeah.
the speed of human HCI, right? Human computer interaction. Similarly, there's another field of human robot interaction, and people also work in that field. And that field is like where you need safety. You have to ensure safety of people.
Hmm.
Like one of the example that I had saw in CMU is like they're trying to feed people who are immobilized or maybe who do not have arms due to some
Right.
injury or
Acha,
in
acha,
that
acha, I
case,
see.
safety matters.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an
Makes sense. So
interesting
that's the kind of
thing,
stuff
man.
that you're basically looking at addressing. Very cool, man. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining, right? If this actually something large scale like this goes into production, like just the simple use case that you said of feeding people or like helping people who perhaps are differently abled, uh,
Yeah.
is something very huge, and like everybody needs support, and oftentimes a human can't be there. Sometimes it's not even safe for a human to be there, right?
To scale it, basically,
Yeah,
we need
amazing,
multiple
amazing.
agents, right? Yeah.
So, what else? Like, what else over here? So, you're trying to design this bio-robotic arm. So, what else was happening when you were at Pisa?
Oh man, that was like an amazing journey I had. So it so I like the culture in Europe. So it's like 5 days work. Then
Mm.
in
Mm.
the weekend, you don't even get to open the lab. You don't even have access to the lab. So you have to explore Europe. That's their
Yeah.
culture, and I really enjoyed it. So every weekend we were roaming around Pisa. We were roaming around. We were mostly going in the outskirts of Europe, and
Mm.
those were like the beautiful places. So it was summer. Luckily, we were
Right.
there, and the weather was very pleasant. Being an Indian, it was warm, so it was really good for me.
Right.
Explored lot of pizzas. So
What
if
are what was one of like the most memorable places that you remember and you'll definitely want to go back if you travel
there's,
there?
I think I had two incidences. One of them
Okay.
is like a pizza place that I had been there, and they offer like a pizza of 1 meter or a half meter, just like
Oh.
huge.
One
I have
meter.
never, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Mm.
And if you go
That
for a
is
1 meter pizza, you need at least four people. Without that,
I,
you can't
so
finish it
when you
otherwise.
mean 1 meter, you mean 1 meter and what
diameter,
diameter or
In the length. So their pizza,
diameter. Oh, that's a different thing.
yeah, yeah. So their pizzas are not circular. They are kind of
okay,
Oh.
rectangular.
okay, okay, that's
Yeah. So
interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
As
understood,
a
understood, understood,
as a
understood,
pizza
understood.
lover, this is interesting information.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of the amazing experience, and especially they offer allow you to have different toppings on every piece. So you
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
can choose your toppings. It won't be like the entire pizza will be with one single topping. So
Mm.
that's amazing part, and we had been there in the night, so the dinner was amazing. That
Nice,
Nice.
was
nice,
one memorable part, and I would definitely like to go again and visit that place again.
Mm.
nice.
And what is the second one?
Yeah. So second one was like a journey that we had. It was unexpected. So there's a hill station. I am not able to remember the name. Shit. So there's one hill station, and that hill station was, I think, half hour from my place where I was
Hmm.
staying.
Okay.
So we took the bus, and it was Sunday. So we decided that
Hmm.
we'll go in the afternoon and come back by the evening. So we
Mm.
already had been there, so knew the timings of the buses.
Mm-hmm.
So we planned, we went there, and we just roamed around. It was a hill station, and there was a fort as well. So you get to see a very beautiful view from that top of the fort.
Hmm.
So we spent a lot of time. We thought that okay, the last bus is at 7 in the evening. So we decided okay, we'll go take that bus. Before that, we had our dinner, and then we went to the bus stop. That bus didn't came.
Oh, this happens in Europe too.
Yes.
Okay,
Like,
then what happened?
Then we were waiting for like, okay, maybe the bus has got delayed, maybe it will come. So we waited for half hour, we waited for an hour, and then the another issue was the language. Whatever we
Right,
were
hmm.
saying to the people, they do not understand. They only understand Italian,
right.
and
Right, right, right.
and even we tried to ask for a lift in
Right,
Europe, nobody
right.
offered. Everyone was scared,
Yeah,
saying that we are not from Italy.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
So after 8:30, we realized that the bus is not gonna come.
Okay, then.
Then after some time, one of the person who was an English speaker who helped us, and he told us that okay, the bus will not come because the timings of the buses are different on Sunday. That
So how did you guys then figure out the solution? And they said, how did you get back?
yeah. So after that, we discovered if there is any place to stay. We hadn't
Mm.
found any, so we stayed for the whole night on in near that fort.
Uh,
Damn.
Yeah.
Nice, 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 nice. spooky, you know.
Like Sunday well spent.
Yeah.
Like,
Awesome, man. Awesome. So you said you went with like a few people, or how exactly was your peer group there? And specifically, what I want to know is, did you perhaps have like more Indians or a little bit more international folk, or like how exactly did that multicultural environment, multinational environment play out?
Okay, so the twist was like there's one of my friend who decided to go for NUS. He also got into an NUS, and but eventually some visa issues happened and he didn't make it there. So, but on the last moment, I actually asked my professor that if he can come to Italy and can work on the same project. So he got that opportunity, and we both traveled. He is also from mechanical from VNIT itself. So we
Awesome.
both were there. Apart from that, if I would say the group in Italy, there were few Indians as well as there were few Italians.
Mhm.
Even I was shocked to see that Indians are there as well. So
Where are we not there, man? Where are we not there?
true.
Right. So you found it pretty easy because you had like somebody that you knew, and then there were some other
Mm.
Indians as well. But how was your interaction with the Italians, for example?
Okay, so interaction with Italians is slightly challenging, man. They are very cool and calm, but they
Hmm.
don't understand English. They don't understand Hindi.
Right.
So sometimes it gets tricky. But
Right.
the people from the institute, they totally understand English. So
Right.
it
mhm.
was great between with them. We also had lot of common meets, dinners,
Hmm.
but outside the institute, it was difficult.
Difficult to socialize. Yeah.
Yes.
One very interesting thing which I found is, um, of course, India is a very different kind of setup because we just have so many languages. But
Yeah.
in general, let's say in France, right? I don't know much about Italy, but France per se, the beauty is the world kind of conforms to France, like everything that France wants. So all of the literature in the world, all of the movies, the media, everything, every single thing, you'll find it in French. Right? I'm pretty sure it's very similar in Italy as well. So much of everything, like even your most favorite things that you would be familiar with right from childhood, right? I have seen Tom and Jerry in
S-
French. You know,
but
it's
the
it's up to that
Tom and Jerry
extent
is
over there.
universal, man. Tom and Jerry is
That's
universal.
that
Like
is
so
my
many
point.
people
That's my point. That everything is just so translated. Even
see
like
it's.
Dan Brown's books, right? That's also in French. And to find the English version, you have to put in effort, oftentimes. So I think it might be similar in a lot of the rest of the European countries as well. Just like fun fact.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Awesome,
was
awesome.
thinking like that applies anywhere, right? It applies to
Not
any
not
place.
really, not really. Look at India, right? So a foreigner who comes to India, he will find a lot of English literature, which is far easy. I mean, I can't say today how it might be in let's say in France, because maybe
That's
e-commerce has
because,
changed the spectrum quite a bit. But like at least as of 7 8 years back, of maybe
no,
six
that's
7 years
because of
back.
the Commonwealth, right? So most of the Commonwealth and the countries, the British tried to change the
Yeah,
main
yeah.
vernacular, right? That's
The
because of
adoption
that,
is there,
not
of
because
course.
of. Correct. So if you see like, the other ones, even I don't think, like for instance, Japan, Germany, for instance, I don't
Mm.
think that you will the
No,
primary
in general, I think the European countries have held on to their like language and
heritage.
their,
Yeah.
yeah, their heritage a lot. In spite of there being a lot of wars and there being so much more over there, perhaps maybe
No,
400 500 years back. But
but that's what I'm
you're
saying,
right.
right?
You're right. The recent colonization that
They
has
were
been,
not on the losing
yeah, yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah. The recent colonization, I would agree that
Mm.
effect of it obviously would more so on the Commonwealth, 100%. Yeah, yeah. But I think in India, just the effort also for conservation, the effort for any kind of heritage based projects is very less. Funding that goes to those kind of projects is also very less. um, yeah, things like that.
I
Okay,
am not
cool.
informed enough to comment on that.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Okay, so there's a project that's going on in Triple IT, where our own 3D lab,
Repet is
they are
not that
trying.
old also, man. Heritage पे डाल दिया already.
नहीं, heritage projects. So what they are actually trying to do is the 3D lab there. So they're trying to
Hmm.
capture Indian dance form in 3D, digitize it, and essentially the moment you digitize it, the moment you kind of store it, it gives you like one of the applications is preservation of heritage. So they pitched it to the, I think the Indian government, they pitched it to several sources in order to raise funds. And I think there was a significant amount of challenge to raise funding. Of course, they did give, I think if I'm not mistaken, government of Rajasthan or I think one of these governments, they actually gave them a big funding of 40-50 lakhs or something like that. I don't recall the exact numbers, but like these kind of projects, they're often, they take a bit of a backseat, and perhaps if let's say our lab wanted to showcase that as their star project, I don't know how much traction it would receive. Like most people will be like, okay, you're going to store like our saris and like the different kinds of ways we wear stuff and like all the hand mudras and all, what is the value of that? I don't know. So it's going to be very, very speculative. The value might be very speculative, this kind of effort. Whereas I feel in France or many of these European countries, they just consciously take the effort, or the world rather takes the effort. Maybe they're in the position of power. So the world takes the effort to convert everything to French. So the French can actually consume it, but whatever.
Even just like adding to it, they you won't believe, but their education up to the bachelor's is in Italian. If you go to France, it's in French, which is
Right.
not so common in India. It's almost
Yeah.
most of these are in English.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I should point out, see, the things that you're comparing are very different, because
Yeah.
Italy or
100%.
even France, the size, right? The European countries, their
Correct.
sizes are essentially a state in India. So
Yeah.
if you're
There's no
comparing
debating that.
them, then
There's no
yeah,
debating that. And also, like, even if you take it down and say, hey, we want to compare states, even then it's not a fair comparison, just because like the history that we are coming with, the kind of cultural differences and so many other differences. Like if you're starting from scratch, right, it's very
Yeah.
easy. But if you have such a huge history, to deal with all of that background itself takes a lot of effort. So yeah, 100%, it's not an apples to apple comparison. I don't know, it's a fruit to vegetable comparison. But yeah. Anyway, coming back to the point. So you had this awesome piece of work. You had a great time in Italy.
Yeah.
And so this was basically sort of a research summer internship kind of a thing, right?
Yes.
Then what, you came back to your college, and then after that you went to CMU, or how was exactly that whole transition?
Yeah. So this internship in Italy was after my third year. So it was 3 months summer internship, as you rightly mentioned. Then I came back to India. I had to
what
complete
happened,
my
man? So the project in Italy, what was the conclusion there?
Oh yeah. So the project actually continued. So we actually developed till one stage where we actually developed that sensor. We did some initial trials where we actually saw. So the hypothesis was, if you apply some force on this graphene printed sensor, you will see some changes in the voltage as well as some changes in the resistance,
Mm-hmm.
because graphene has some resistance properties. So we actually did some trials, but there was another PhD who joined that lab. He actually took over that project and he continued from there. So that's how
Nice.
that project continued ahead, and we had to come back because it was involving a lot of hardware stuff. We were not able to continue it from India.
Remotely.
We had, yeah, so we had an opportunity that we can maybe continue after that, after completing our graduation. So I came back to India, then started again, joined my bachelor's university and continued my final year. And after that, I pursued like I should go for another internship. Again, some cold emails, and then went for the Carnegie Mellon.
Nice.
Awesome. So another
How did
400 emails later,
yeah,
CMU.
how did the cold email convert to proper call for CMU?
Yeah. So the things changed this time. So last time I had cold email almost like 500 or 400, but this time it was not like that. This
Mm-hmm.
time I was more focused on computer vision and robotics, and I was only emailing very few professors. So two of my seniors were already in Carnegie Mellon. One is Rohan Thakkar, as I mentioned, and another is Prasad, the one who helped me to get into this robotics club at VNIT. So they
Hmm.
both interned in Carnegie Mellon, and they helped me to get introduced with the professor Howie Chaucer. So
Mhm.
Howie Chaucer, I got introduction with him. He liked my profile. We had some interview rounds, and then that's how I got into Carnegie Mellon.
Awesome. So over there, what did you work on?
Yeah. So initially, I thought of working on snake robots because if you see Howie's lab, it's full of snakes. He loves snakes. So eventually, he says that he doesn't like real snakes, and that's why
Hmm.
he developed all these artificial snake robots. Even I am
Hashtag
surprised with
snake
Saap
the.
hai
snake
sab,
wars. Yeah.
saap hai sab, saap.
Yeah. So I actually went and I decided that I will work on the snake robots and some reinforcement learning because controls is something that is very much integrated with robots. But at that time, reinforcement learning was getting at peak, and everyone was trying to replace control systems with reinforcement learning. So I
Mhm.
had that thought in my mind. But Hobby is a professor who allows you to work in any field. What
Mhm.
he demands is will give you the support. You can take all the resources from the lab, but you have to do a good research. It should be very novel in the world. No one should have done it. After joining the lab, I actually got introduced with one of the PhD from his lab. He was working in computer vision and biomedical robots, and he was working on point cloud registration problem statement, which actually attracted me. And I thought, okay, I should work with him and I should actually try to work on this problem statement. So that's how even though I have decided to work on snake robots, I changed my track and started
Okay.
working with these point clouds.
If I may, so what kind of attracted you towards this registration problem or point clouds or 3D in general?
So, majorly, I will see the applications. When I was discussing with, so the PhD's name is Arun. I was discussing with Arun, and Arun explained me what point clouds are because it was very new. We all know images, we all know sound or audio or videos, but point cloud is something very new for me. So he explained me it's basically 3D representation of an object, basically the XYZ coordinates in the 3D domain or in the 3D space. And then he actually explained me how much useful these are and how much we can utilize them in making the life even better. So one example would be VR. Recently, we have seen that Apple has launched a new VR system.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually augmented reality, so that is even better than that. Another bigger application was in medical robotics. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, they have very small sensors which actually gets attached to medical devices. They can go inside the body, and from there you can actually scan the organs. You can actually create 3D models of your organs. So
Mm-hmm.
that was actually happening in that lab. I have actually seen the 3D models of lungs, liver, that I have seen. So these are definitely some interesting areas for me, and I can clearly see the applications. So that's why I thought,
So,
okay, this problem is interesting.
so what are the main advantages? Because you touched upon this, right? Like the existing sensing methods based on image or video and all of that. What advantage does a point cloud have over these,
Yes.
especially in
So
terms of the VR, the Apple headset that you were mentioning, right?
yeah. So okay. So there are first thing about if we go for VR, we want basically what we want to do is we want to augment some objects in the 3D space. If you're only looking at images and if you just overlay an image on another on the real view, you will
Hmm.
not actually get the real feel of that object. What you will still believe is like, okay, this is just an image and I can see that image, but you will not be able to visualize that it's actually the world and I can interact with it or I can actually see that object. So that difference will always be there when it comes to the point cloud, but not with the images because images has a grid structure which is in 2D, two-dimensional space. So that limitation is always there with the images. And when it comes to medical field, Images have a major issue of reflections. Lighting conditions are
Mm,
also problems. And especially if you look at the surgical scenarios, there are so many lights. That room is filled with lights so that surgeons can see each and every detail. But
Mhm.
that those lights cause problems when you actually capture those images and you want to process those images. So
Right.
images has that problem. And another part is, so because we are from engineering background, we might not have much information about how noises affect these images. So, and if you go inside the body, there is so much noise because everything is
Right.
reddish. There's only
mm,
blood.
mm,
So it's
mm,
very hard to actually for us, even for a surgeon, it's very hard to understand which is vein, which is an artery. It comes with practice. It comes with the
Mhm.
experience. So that those challenges won't be there with point clouds because it's just a structure. It doesn't involve these colors.
right, right. Oh, this is
Right.
interesting. I didn't think about this. Right? The reflections of it and even the color.
Makes
You have
sense.
to differentiate
So
essentially too. Yeah,
correct,
good.
correct. Yeah. So basically, if you have these so images were typically captured with cameras, right? Now, if you are kind of looking at point clouds, there are lidar sensors to do it, but
Yeah,
practically, perhaps in like this medical applications,
yeah,
those kind of sensors just can't be used for obvious reasons, scale and size. I'm not
yeah.
sure if like extremely small sensors and like how effective they are and so on. So, how is it exactly done? I'm just wondering, how is it done in that domain? Is it like mostly from image they do depth estimation or something like that, or maybe there are small? Are there that small sensors, or how does it work there?
Yeah, so basically, I will explain you one of the sensor that even the bio-robotics lab developed, Hobbies
Okay.
lab. So what they have done is they have a one small laser which actually projects almost 4 to 5 points as a in a straight line, and then there is a camera which captures that image, and basically it also captures those points because
Mm,
it's like the reflect it's like the lidar. So
Mm-hmm.
from that image you can easily detect those points because they have a specific color, they have a specific
Right.
intensity, and based on that you can actually calculate where that point is located in the real world. And that
Okay.
sensor they have developed is very small, like it can actually go inside the body.
Awesome. Awesome. So, kind of basically lidar based system,
Yeah.
which is actually capable of going inside the body. Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Because I'm only sort of aware of
yeah,
and
yeah.
familiar
This
with
is
robots, like large scale robots, and the the
yeah,
huge lidar
yeah.
sensors, or
Yeah.
like kinet based sensors, and that kind of stuff. So I was just wondering,
Yeah.
how does something as minuscule as that come?
So
Yeah,
Also,
these lidars are like very popular because of autonomous vehicles. Most of the people
yeah.
know about them.
exactly, exactly,
Correct, correct.
exactly. The other thing was, I think you were saying that there were like 3D printed like organs in the lab. I'm just wondering why. Because are they trying to see if like, I don't know, like I did read somewhere, I don't know if I'm mistaken, or am I imagining it, was it in fiction, that somebody actually tried seeing if a body accepts some kind of artificial organ made of some material, some kind of news
It has
article
been
or
done.
something.
It
Yeah,
has been done.
yeah, not for grafting and not for arteries and all, whole organs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It has been done.
Yeah, so
It's
right, yeah, exactly. So because I'm just wondering, is it science? Was it science fiction, or actually have I heard of it? Uh,
I don't recall if it was for human trials, but it has definitely been done for like mice for sure, for sure. Like there has
Mhm.
been like and I think for even for humans, there was some article I remember reading where they
Something was
had
there, maybe.
printed.
I think if you look it up, something might be there. So I'm just wondering. So what are these guys doing at
Yeah,
CMU?
Sure.
yeah.
So, um, okay. So I will say there are 3D printed organs. Okay, I will give you one example. That was a project I was working on, and the project was actually catheter insertion in the soldier's body. So that was
Okay.
US Army funded project.
Hmm.
So you can't actually insert a catheter in a human's body through a robot, right? In your at least initial experiments,
Right.
because
Correct.
it might fail, it might hurt the person, and that's
Okay.
not ideal. Even
Okay.
medical field will not allow. So what you do is you create dummy organs, you
Got it.
create dummy bodies, and you try on them.
Makes sense.
Once it's successful,
Acha,
then
acha,
you
acha,
go
acha.
on the
So
real
just for
world.
the testing aspect. Okay, that makes sense. But then
No,
that
but
would mean that the organ itself should have like similar properties as the artificial organ should have similar
meat
properties as the
and
real.
flesh, basically, blood
Yeah,
and all of
yeah.
that, density and
So
all of that.
there's a very interesting thing that these people have done. What they do is they print the structure, like we have bones, right? And
Yeah.
then over the bones, we have this entire skin and the muscles. So what they have done is they have printed all the interior part through this 3D printing. Over that,
Mhm.
they lay out some material, which will kind of resemble with the skin or with the body.
Okay.
Even they have gone to one extreme level that they have tried to insert tubes which will replicate the arteries and veins,
I
and
see.
you can actually feel those.
Nice, nice.
Nice, man. Nice. It's really cutting edge work. But I wonder, like you said, there's the army funding that's coming into this project. Like in India, something of this scale probably is very, very difficult to accomplish just because of lack of funds. One like significant difference I found in a lot of the Western universities is the huge government funding that comes in, right?
So, yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah.
So to
Okay.
be honest with you, right, whenever the biggest reasons for, like, one of the biggest sort of events that drive innovation is actually war. Anything, and if you see, one of the biggest
Sure,
spends for any nation is
sure, sure.
actually
Yeah, yeah.
defense related
Defense.
That's
Yeah,
spending.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So but even here also you will have army related like
Yeah,
projects.
yeah.
Of course, the
I
scale
think
might vary
so.
slightly,
I mean, so
but
there's this company, right? Boston Dynamics,
Oh yeah.
the robotics company. Like the
Yeah.
stuff that they were doing like 5 6 years ago was amazing. I just saw a recent video of theirs where there's like a full hand simulation of this almost humanoid, like basically humanoid robot that is. So the guy throws a gun at it, and there are actual human targets and there are artificial targets. It's able to like decipher what to shoot, what not to shoot, and suddenly a human comes in between and stuff like that. And then he throws stuff at the robot. The robot actually takes those down, and
actually,
it's like really amazing at what. I mean, that progress. I actually thought that I don't know how far they're going to go. Like 6 7 years back, that was amazing back then, and today, if you look at it, it's at another level. I think.
to be honest with you though, right, like not taking away from Boston Dynamics progress, they've done some amazing stuff. But one thing where I was also wowed by the videos one, and I especially of the robots like jumping around and all of that, right, doing somersaults and all of that.
And stability of
I
those
came
robots, man. My God.
No,
Anyways, yeah,
but
go ahead.
I came to know later on that these routines are actually pre-programmed. So it's
No,
not, some of the non-determinism is there, but most of these routines are actually pre-programmed, and there have been multiple takes for each video.
now look.
Actually,
To be
this is a
very
quite
honest, if you were to ask a human who's trained in the same program to also do it, right? Even there would be multiple takes and it would be just as challenging. Like you
Hmm.
think about these guys, right? Like FBI and whatever. They go to this training school. They have standard set of routines. They have to learn, and still they struggle to perform, right? So that even though all these things are true, what you're saying, it's still an amazing feat.
even I
It
will
is, it
say like
is
Yeah.
definitely
programming to make those attempts is also very challenging.
very challenging.
Yeah.
And they
Correct,
have done
correct.
really great job in at least even if we consider that it's not like a real life thing and it's
Yeah.
after multiple trials, but
Yeah.
still making that program is challenge.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. No wonder.
Yeah, yeah. I think so these are all obviously very infrastructure and money heavy projects, right? Probably the only place where India has some kind of standing is, I'm guessing, computer vision, because everything is mostly, I mean, the resources required to do CV research is not as much, or basically image based research or ML research, or most of these. And the data collection also, the modalities are relatively easier. So I think that's the only place where perhaps we can really push ahead. But most
No,
of
man,
these like
that's too
hardware based
much, like
stuff.
too blanket a statement. I mean, there is
No, no. I
a
mean,
lot of
so
stuff where Indians are good at.
No,
I
in
mean,
terms of AI research, I'm saying, right? Like if you
hmm,
look at AI, robotics, and all of this, like
Mm-hmm.
hardware heavy domains, like doing some government funded projects, like having this catheter insertion, all that, it's very, very tough because we just don't have the funds, and some executing that is very easy. Whereas the barrier to entry in maybe computer vision research, NLP, and all these like these kind of applied domains is very less because all you need is data. And data is of course tough to get, but still it's like the modality is such that you can capture that data, create that data, simulate that data easier in easier fashion. And yeah, I just feel
Yeah.
the barrier of entry is far lesser.
Yeah.
Like
I think still India is progressing. Like if
yeah,
you
yeah.
see that iDEX challenges, they are
Mm,
quite good and they are well formulated. But only issue
What
I
is the
feel is,
SIDEX challenge?
so
I'm not
iDEX
aware of
is
that.
basically organized by Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force, and every year they publish some challenges that they are actually facing while dealing with enemies. And based on that, different startups, different research groups can apply for those challenges. They have to
Mm-hmm.
submit a document of 3 to 4 pages, I
yeah.
guess, and then you basically submit your proposal. If you have a demo or some demoable thing, that will your chances will get increased. Once you get into accepted part, and then you basically get some fundings from the government. I am not able to
Achha.
recall how much fund they give, because that's what I have heard, that extracting those funds is the challenging part.
Mm,
The problem
right.
statements are definitely good. They are actually real
Right.
world applications, but the funding is a challenge.
Okay, awesome, man. So then at CMU, so you're getting into this point cloud registration kind of space. So what exactly is this registration problem, and why is it important? What did you kind of address at the end of the whole uh, project?
Hmm. Yeah, so I will give one very simple example so that it will be easy to understand. So everyone has a smartphone nowadays, and they have a mode of panorama. So
Mm,
it's
Mm.
basically what you do is you take your phone and you move it around, so you get a very large picture. So
right.
the technology behind it works by like taking multiple images and then stitching them so that they can
Correct.
make a large picture. So that's the same thing that can be applied in point clouds. Because you have sensor, it won't cover the entire world. It will only cover small region. Based and once you let's say if you are in an autonomous car and you have a lidar, now you capture small region of the city. Then your
Mm,
car moves. Then you again capture another part of the city. But now you want to create the entire 3D map of the city, or maybe
mm,
a small place or a region. How will you create that? You need to take all these small regions and then you have to basically align them so that you can
mm,
create the entire map.
right.
And this exact thing requires an algorithm, and that algorithm is basically point cloud registration.
Right. And so I am familiar with the point cloud registration in the human context, human
Mm.
registration, and so on. So
Uh,
what was like the exact domain that you were operating in?
So initially, I was only operating in the general problem statement because
Okay.
it was academia. So we were only focusing on solving general problems. So initially, there was a data set which is ModelNet 40. It
Okay.
already has different types of objects, and
Hmm.
these are basically point clouds of those objects.
Okay.
Very general use cases like cup, then maybe car or maybe airplanes. All
Right.
these things are captured. So what we were doing is we manually have created different views, and we manually have simulated the sensors so that we can capture some small parts of these objects. And then we were trying to actually develop an algorithm which can actually register them. So
Got it.
the interesting part was, already there are classical algorithms that can solve
Right.
this problem, but they are not efficient or they are not very fast in terms of
Hmm.
computation. But what we proposed is a deep learning based algorithm which can be very fast, which can be integrated with this latest AI solutions.
Right. Right.
So this
Makes
is the
sense.
one with the fixed sensor, one with the occlusion. You have a video about it on YouTube, right? A small video registration using a fixed sensor, and then you're overlapping it with the template.
That was one of the application where we are actually trying it out. That was another for another paper, but yeah, it's very similar to that.
You know, I've not exactly gone through the exact work of yours, but I'm wondering that, so like all of this synthetic, or how have you kind of or have you factored in noise into the whole system? Because if it's very clean, then probably the features are easy to match. But
Yeah.
if there is like significant noise, and especially like noise in the image domain is one thing, noise in 3D domain probably
Mm,
makes it even worse, right?
yeah.
So yeah, how did you handle noise?
Yeah. So I think there are, the first thing is like, in I was in CMU in 2018. The
Okay,
first paper that can actually deal with point clouds in a deep learning manner came into 2017. So it was
okay.
like the beginning of that era of
Right,
research in deep learning with point clouds.
right. Makes
So
sense.
what we were doing, so there are two challenges. One is like there was not a very intense research in this domain, and the
Hmm.
second was lack of data sets.
Yeah,
When I started working, there were only two data sets. One was ModelNet 40 and the another was ShapeNet. So these
right.
only two data sets can be used. There is very much lack of real world data sets. So getting into
Right.
those is challenge. So initially what we thought of is like, okay, right now at least we should make an algorithm which can work on synthetic data
Makes
sets.
sense.
And
Makes sense.
eventually going further, we can modify it, or the industries can actually take up inspiration from there and actually make
Right.
algorithms which can work in real world.
Build on it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean the timeline kind of puts things into perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
2018. Yeah, I recall. So 18 was basically the time when even I was kind of starting for the 3D reconstruction, and like you said, so this was, you had rigid objects in ShapeNet.
Yeah,
So we had almost nothing. I think when it came to
yeah.
humans, non-rigid
I
objects
totally
and
agree.
humans. So
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. I think 3D is a huge problem,
Actually,
infrastructure
that
heavy
is
problem.
the you sort of preempted the question I was going to ask, because like what are the challenges? Because you're saying it is new, right? What were the challenges you faced when starting research in such an area, PCR, the point cloud registration?
Yeah, so I think even Abhinav can also relate it to it, because so there was no data set, there was no literature. So basically, whatever experiments you do, they should come from your own mind, your own thoughts. You cannot replicate any experiment and you cannot use anyone's idea into this field. You have to try a lot of experiments. So I will say I tried actually like 4 to 5 months with different experiments and all failed. At one point of time, me and Arun were actually discussing that should we change the problem? Are you still motivated to work on it? Because this was my first research project, and for
Right.
him, it was his like final year of PhD. For him, it was fine,
Mm,
but for me, it was like first time, so had to deal with all these failures. And so we usually had this weekly meeting in the lab.
mhm.
Every meeting, I just go and I will say that okay, this is what I tried, and it failed, it didn't succeed. So
I feel you. I feel you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically that's how it worked. But eventually, we stick to the idea. We tried different experiments. I will say at least 40, 50 different types of experiments, and then finally one day that miracle happened and it worked. It was literally the miracle thing for me, because that day I had lost hope that it will not work, and
Mhm.
maybe in 1 or 2 weeks I had to change the problem statement, and this entire 6 months are gone, but it
Right.
actually worked that day.
Awesome.
Nice. So
I mean, the
this
first
one,
experience is always it has the largest learning curve, right? Your first like
Yeah.
really huge research project. Yeah, Debayan, go on.
no, I was going to say that. So one thing was there was lack of data, there was lack of existing research, right? So, but then how did you guys go about it? Like, I'm guessing even
Hmm.
the sensing hardware would be costly, right? Even though these labs have access to a lot of funds, but it would be a specialized hardware, and then within the limited timelines, how did you like? Did you try to get those? Was it
So
already there?
yeah, you're right, Deban. But initially, what we did is now we split the problem. So initially, we did not focus on the hardware part. What we did is we, as Abhinav mentioned, we actually took the synthetic data. The
Hmm.
synthetic data was readily available on the internet. We actually took that data and we curated the data set that was required for us. It was easy
Hmm.
from that particular data set. So That's how we started approaching that problem statement. 6 months we only worked on that synthetic data. We didn't go for any real world data because as you mentioned, it was challenging because there was no research, there was no data sets. So we decided that we should go step by step rather than directly jumping into real world.
Right.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And then, so then you finally like had a publication based on that, or multiple publications. I think I've seen some stuff on 3DV. Is there an IJCV, if I'm not mistaken? I don't recall. But yeah, but basically you had a bunch of publications in and around, I think, point clouds and registration and so on. And
Yeah.
then what happened?
Yeah, so it was a quite a long journey. So actually, in first year of mine at CMU, I completed this project on point cloud registration. Definitely in very constrained manner, very limited scenarios. I got that paper and I submitted to one of the conference. The reviews were not up to the mark, and we actually didn't make it. So I had submitted to ICCV,
Hmm.
but eventually it didn't went through. So we submitted to archive.
Right.
Then so initially, I decided that I will only stay for 1 year in CMU, and then later on I will pursue my masters.
Okay.
But what happened is that paper did not went through, so I was slightly upset. So
Right.
and at the same time, Howie offered me a position that you can stay in the lab, and I will support your even expenses. So I decided, okay, I will stay 1 more year, and maybe I will do
Okay.
some more research. So in
Right.
this, so I stayed in the second year, and in that second year, actually, I tried to solve some problems that are actually in the real that are actually exist in the real world. Like what we are trying to do is like we are trying to in the initial experiments, we are not trying to simulate the sensors. We are just simply chopping off these point clouds into two regions or into two objects. But this time we actually simulated sensors. We actually tried to
Mhm.
make it look like a real world scenarios. And
Right.
that's how we actually improved our algorithm. So you will see one paper which is only on archive, another paper is in 3DV. So after these 2 years, I finally got into the 3DV paper.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, man.
So how did
Uh,
this one I didn't understand. So you mentioned like being staying there for a couple of years, right? So I thought that like when you're finishing your bachelor's, you applied, you cold called, got into CMU for a 6 month intern, right? How did it transform then?
Yeah. So after my cold call, I got a 1 year long internship.
1 year long, I see.
Yeah, 1 year long internship. So it usually happens is like if you go for a 1 year long internship, either you apply for your master's during that period, or you can continue with the professor if the research work is interested for you and if the professor is also interested to fund you. So I did not choose the first option because I thought I haven't explored the field a lot. And I
Mm,
actually wanted to understand if I definitely want to pursue my master's in the same field or not. That
mm.
question was still there. So definitely the paper did not got into the conference. So I was also nervous because of that. But yeah, so I thought, okay, let's give 1 more year. The work that I was doing was also getting recognized, even though it didn't got into conference, but people were recognizing my work. I was getting emails from different PhDs, different profs. So
hmm.
I thought, okay, this is definitely an interesting area. I should do more research in it. And then maybe I can, in the second year, I can take a call that, okay, I want to go for masters in the same field, and I can particularly focus on the universities which have labs particularly doing this work.
Right.
Interesting, interesting. So this is something which, so this was basically at the time of, so this was after you have graduated, right? After
Yeah.
the, and yeah, so this was interesting to listen to because many people at that, in that juncture in life, they're running behind their first job. Whereas you were already experimenting with an internship and pursuing a master's, and now you decided to give 1 more year also, not worrying about this thing, right? So did anything play into your head? Like, was there any doubt about, or was there any thought about getting a stable job or anything from the family side, anything like that?
Um, so from the beginning, I had an aim to go for masters in US. So
Hmm.
the only thing was I was plan. So initially, as I mentioned, I had to do a career in aerospace. So my plan was I will complete my bachelor's from mechanical so that I can go into aerospace for masters. So that was my
Hmm.
initial plan, and I never thought that I will go for a job. So I decided that I will not even sit for this job interviews and placements in India. But eventually, in the third year itself, after the Italy internship, I have realized that, okay, I think I'm more interested in robotics and computer vision. After
Hmm.
coming back to India, what I did is, so actually, there's even one more story behind it. One of the PhD in that Italy institute, she told me about neural networks. And at
Hmm.
that time, I was like, what are these neural networks? I had no idea about them. And but after a few days, I forgot because I was more involved in this developing sensors and developing the robotic arm. But after coming back to India, I actually searched for them. I actually looked out what are these neural networks, why they are used, and why this field is interesting. Because she has pointed out that this field is growing rapidly, and you should look out for this field. So in my final year, I actually explored about deep learning, about the computer vision, and then I actually started developing interest in it. I thought, okay, this is very much interesting as well as applicable to robotics. I was
Hmm.
already interested into robotics, and it has applications in robotics. So that's the whole cause I started thinking about it,
Hmm.
and that's how I decided, okay, I should go for this particular field. Definitely, there were some thoughts in my mind. Is it the right decision or not? But that's why I decided I should go for a internship because that will give me the exposure. That will tell me if I'm able to do it or not.
Hmm.
Worst thing is like I will spend 1 year, I might not have anything, but again coming back, I will at least have some skills. Other
Right.
than that, if I had gone for a job, maybe I would not have got this opportunity. I would not have understood that which field I really want to go. And
Right.
masters is like a one journey where you spend your 2 years. There's a huge economical pressure as well.
Correct.
So I thought that the internship was a better decision than going for directly going for a master's.
So I have a question about this, right? Because so internship, how does it differ from a master's? Because internship, I'm guessing this is a paid thing. So you're getting a stipend and is your stay, etc., taken care of? Because in masters, the economic pressure that you're talking about, that mainly comes from the fees and all of that, right? So how is
Yeah.
this different?
So
Expectation wise also. Like maybe the expectations
mm,
from a internship are far higher than a master student, right? Maybe the professors expect this kind of work to be done. How's it
okay.
different?
So I think there are two directions of your question. One is about the financial part, and the second is about the like what are the expectations. So let's come to the expectation part. So expect in terms of expectation, you will be working in the lab for full time. So your work is to either do research and publish papers and do some novel research. And the second option could be to work on industry funded projects, just like the one which is funded by US Army. You have to give a greater contribution in that projects. And it should be involving software, hardware, all the skills should be there. So this is like the expectations, and the difference between the masters and an intern is you don't get to do courses in the university. So you can go and sit in the classrooms, you can attend the lectures, but you will not get credits for that. You
Not
cannot attempt
expected
the
to.
exams. Yeah,
Hmm.
yes. So, if you are a master student, you will have to do all these things. Your time will be invested in it. So, you will get a very lesser or smaller amount of time to do research. So, from a master student, it is expected that he can publish maybe one or two paper, or even not. Even if he doesn't, it's fine. It's acceptable. But from an intern, it is always expected. So, that's the expectation in terms of masters and intern. And when you say about economics or financial part, it actually depends. So for me, the first year was actually non-funded internship. So actually, the entire expenses of living and food and travel all are taken care by my parents. definitely they were very supportive in that period. But as the time progressed, Howie actually offered me the expenses, and it was even up more than the expectations. So I actually saved all the money that my parents offered me and returned them back.
Right.
But
Right.
it depends on the scenario, man.
Awesome, man.
I
Awesome.
see.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
pretty cool. That's
is,
pretty cool, right? That you've kind of saved up all that money, and
yeah.
the part where I could see the smile and the pride in your face, and you're like, I gave it back to my parents, you know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the kind
yeah.
of one-way
And
street, yeah.
so how much are usual stipends like for this, like this kind of a role in CMU, like research internship?
Yeah, so if you are a research intern for a full-time position, then you will be offered around $2,500 per month.
Mm-hmm.
And because actually it also depends on the location, because CMU is located in Pittsburgh, which is quite a small place, not very expensive. You can manage your expenses and still you can save. But if this
Mm.
is the same condition, maybe in California or maybe in some bigger
Yeah.
cities like New York, maybe you won't be able to save, but still you will be able to manage your expenses.
Right, right. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes sense.
Typically, the stipend given to interns is very similar to the stipend given to PhD students, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Awesome,
Right.
awesome, man. So then finally, when did you decide that okay, I've had enough of this experience at CMU, and then I have to move on to other things? Like, what was your thought process, and take us through that?